Some viewers may find the following video disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Board Games Unlocked, and today I'm doing a no-run-through review for the Rivers and Rafts expansion of Endless Winter. This is the final expansion that comes with the game, which is not to say that there aren't any, because there are actually quite a few things that come in this box. Besides the Ancestors expansion, just for sheer variety that expansion brings, I think that this is the best expansion for this game. I really, really enjoyed it. And just like the Cave Paintings expansion, they managed to do a lot with so little, which is something that most companies and most expansions don't bring to a game. A lot of times it's like, oh, here's an expansion, and then it's just this whole ordeal, you know, to incorporate it into this. But with every expansion that they've added for this, they never lost their focus of what the actual game was about and kept its core so that you only had a few things to learn, but also a lot more strategy, and that's what this expansion brings in. So the main focus is that it affects the terrain board. So like the Cave Paintings expansion had its little gimmick of like the Cave Paintings board, and then the Ancestors expansion affecting a majority of like everything else, culture cards, animal cards, tribe cards. This is one that's like, okay, now we're dealing with the terrain board. And it brings so much more strategy to this that it just blows it wide open, while also still, I cannot stress enough, keeping it still very simple and focused. Like it's such a clean expansion. So it adds basically a lot more area control. You're allowed to maneuver throughout this terrain board and actually care about a little bit more of where your camps are going. Because in a lot of the games I've played of this, when the terrain board is set up, it's just like, okay, well that's immediately, obviously, the best spot. So, like, it's like, oh, 2 megaliths and a offering, you know, upgrade. That's clearly what everyone's going to go for, and lucky me, I get to go first, so I'm going to go there, spend all of my cards to be able to move all my tents there, you know, drop my tents, move them there, and then build a village right on that. And not saying that you can't take that from someone once they build a settlement, but it requires even more work for someone to do that. But what's really neat about this is that that's going to be few and far between, because you don't use as much of the actual original, you know, colored, you know, different colored tiles, you know, the one that gives you tools and food and points and stuff. Instead, you have these three-piece, I don't want to mess with it, but these three-piece terrain spots that have rivers on them. And you, and like everyone else, has a raft on it that allows you to move along this river to be able to place camps on that spot and then gather and then place your villages. But you're also vying for control on who's furthest down the river, who has tents on the river, because during the eclipse phase you get points for whoever's closest to the end of the river that like opens up into the ocean. Whoever is closest there gets a point, and for each camp that is on the river. And then, on top of that, they add in landmark tiles, and you can play with, you know, 1, 2, or 3, and they open up a lot more scoring opportunities as well. The 3 that I have in this solo game I just played had, you got a point for each tent in different, in the inside of the hexagon, then you got a point for each tent on the outside of the hexagon, and then you get a point, or you get 2 points for each village that was touching a river tile. And so just having those landmark you know, locations and vying for influence in those specific spots allows you to also gain a bunch more points. It's like, okay, well, I want to control that area and get all 5 of my tents in the middle, so that I'm also gaining benefits for the middle area, as well as I'm getting 5 points just because I own this landmark. In this particular case, it's not the best, you know, combination, because it's like, well, you can either focus on one and get 5 points there, like having them all in the middle, or you can have them all spread out. But what's also extremely interesting is each river spot, whoever has the most influence there, gets a fish token. And these are randomized tokens that give whoever draws them a benefit. This one in particular happens to be 3 food, but some of them are megaliths, some of them are, drawing cards, and if you control like every spot in the river, that you're just drawing 5 fish tokens. Some of them are just straight up points. It's so much to do with the terrain board, but it's also, again, extremely clean. So with these landmarks that I was talking about, it's like, yeah, okay, for the one where it's like you get a point for each village on the outside. Well, that's where most of the regular terrain pieces are going to be. That's where most of these are going to be. So it's like, if you want to, like, for example, the one that's worth like 1 point, that's on the end, and then the megalith one is on the end, as well as some glacier tiles. If you control the outer end and you control that landmark, let's just say you have all your camps out, that's going to be 5 points on top of the benefits you get, whether it's more points, whether it's a megalith, whether it's an offering track upgrade. And then, for the other one, for having points or having your camps in the middle, if you have all 5, that'd be 5 points, but if you also control that, you're getting the fish tokens, which could equally be megaliths and stuff like that, so it balances out extremely well. And then, of course, vying for villages getting placed. I am extremely impressed with this, because this is also not the same layout, just how you orient the original 3 tiles. Now, one of them always has to be, that's the center, but you can flip it, and that's also going to change how the river runs, which I'm really excited about, because that the way that the river moves is going to change how the other tiles fill out around the board. You might have a lot on one side and not a lot on the other. In my game, I had one tile over on the right that was just food, and it's like, well, that's not really worth it. It's over there isolated by itself, so everything else was congealed on one end. Everyone also has these starting camp spots, so whenever you place camps, you can either place them where your raft is, and moving your raft is super simple, or you can place them on your starting zone. And moving a raft is very cool, because it's like, okay, for 1 movement point, you can move it down the river as much as you want. So it's like, for 1 movement point, I can move it here all the way to the very end if I wanted to. But to move back requires it's each movement point. And there are 5 landmarks. So not a huge variety. Not a huge variety in terms of like a bunch of landmarks you can put up, but the different combinations matched with the different layout of the whole terrain board is going to vastly change the game. So they also add in another stone tablet. This one is basically 2 points for each of your settlements that's touching a landmark, which is good. I mean, that always has to be put in if you're playing with this expansion. And then they add in another tribe, so one last triber, and that's the warrior. And initially he doesn't look like much, and what's cool about him is you can actually play him outside of this expansion. Most of the stuff, like the cave paintings expansion, you had to play with the painter instead of the shaman. The warrior you can just throw in randomly, and he replaces the pathfinder. But he gives you a labor, and if you go to the whatever mountain spot, you get a tool. But what's more interesting about him is his eclipse phase. His eclipse phase allows you to move a tent and move an opponent's tent. And that is something that's added. If you want more competition of area control in this game with the terrain board, then you want to play with the warrior, because in the basically everything else, once a person has placed their tent on the spot, that's it. There's nothing you can do except place more of your tents in that spot to just out influence them, and that's just a waste of time. Might as well just share. But if you have a bunch of warriors in your deck and you save them for the eclipse phase, you just start moving them. Ugh, what is wrong with me? You just start moving them out of the spots that you're trying to compete for into unoptimal spots for them. It's like, oh, okay, well, you're here and you're actually tying for me on 2 points. Well, I'm actually gonna move you there. And oh, you have max food, so that's basically a dead spot for you. I think it's a very nice touch. The it's like it's not broken. Like it's not like every time you play one, you still have to save them for the Eclipse phase. It's only giving you one labor. So yeah, you might win in turn order if you just play a bunch of them, but you're not moving them. I mean, yeah, you could just put in 10 warriors and then just move someone's all the way to like one spot, but you can never move them back onto their starting spot, and you can never move them like onto the beginning like area. So like there's still some rules about how you can't really screw someone over, but it's light competition. It's no more mean than someone putting in a bunch of camps into a spot to steal influence from you. The only thing about this expansion that I think most people might not like is the randomness of the fish. I found them to be quite balanced. Yeah, there's one in there that's 2 points, but then you reshuffle all the tokens. Some of them are just, okay, like there's multiple megaliths in there, there's multiple food and tools and drawing cards and stuff, so it's like, it was never like that big of a deal whenever you were drawing those, and they're super easy to get. I mean, in fact, you can also throw in the Stellar Sea Cow. This is kind of like the Cave Paintings expansion that had the Hager Horse or whatever. This, you just throw in these 5. There's only 5 in the deck, and you can tap it to get 2 fish. So there are other ways outside of controlling those, but there's 5 spots. Yeah, there's 5 spots for you to try and draw from them. It's so easy to get resources. It's so easy to card draw and get food and tools and really points, honestly, that if someone won by drawing the 2-point one and they won by like up 2 points, then yeah, I mean, sure, but I highly doubt that's happening. Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it. Like, the randomness of the fish tokens I actually don't think is really that big of a deal. I think the 5 landmarks are enough, just because the thing about all of these expansions, and now, coming full circle with playing this one, this is the final one I've touched everything in this game. It's so succinct, and I think that that's a great thing, because this game is not long anyway. Like, it's 4 eras, like, they go by super quick, and if there was like 10 or 15 landmarks, it's like, I mean, the game doesn't really justify having that much. Like, the 5 is just clean enough, and you don't have to play with 3. You could, in fact, playing with 3, I feel like actually makes it easier for people to score points instead of having just the 1, and then that might cause them a lot more contention. So, and then the way the river is laid out, it's so cool of a variety setup that I would play with this expansion more often than not. The cave painting ones would be like, oh yeah, cool, let's just throw this in just for theme. And I think this one's relatively thematic too. I mean, the frozen river through the glaciers, through the land that everyone lives on, I think works out pretty well. And then, what was I going to say? Oh yeah, so the cave paintings one would be like, okay, let's just do this just as a gimmick. Here, I feel like fits a lot more. It's very appropriate for the terrain section. Because in the base game of just playing regular Endless Winter, the terrain did kind of feel, not necessarily like an afterthought, but kind of like, oh yeah, well, we also have this. Like, the deck building portion wasn't enough, so we threw this in. It's similar to the research track in Lost Ruins of Arnak, but in Lost Ruins of Arnak, the research track was a majority of the game, and that felt more like that was the goal. Here, it's not all about the goal. You don't have to really deal with tents at all. You could just go and get a bunch of culture cards and a bunch of animals and a bunch of tribes, and you can do that whole thing without ever touching this. Lost Ruins, you got to touch the research track. That's the whole kind of point. So this is an extremely appropriate expansion. Out of all of them now, if I were to kind of like overall like not necessarily rank them, but I think it would be this one, the Ancestors, and then the Cave Paintings, and then the modules are very needed. The best thing about this overall game is everything can be modified. Like, you don't like the Elder, okay, we'll throw in the replacement for him from the Ancestors expansion. You want someone to buff your deck a little bit more, get the wolves. You want, more area control, add in the rivers. You want new animals, throw in animals. Like, there's just so much in this actual game that it doesn't feel like Kickstarter bloat, and I'm very, very pleased with all of it. The one thing I wish that they added, and it's very shocking to me that they didn't, is the offering tracks. Like, that is probably still, I think, the weakest aspect of the game. It's not hard to go up on. There's multiple ways to do it, and it's just really for points, so it's just kind of bizarre to me that they didn't do anything creative with that. They did everything else. New animals, new actions, new cards, new area control stuff, extra stuff with, like, gaining points with, like, the weather and things like that. It's just so weird that they completely didn't touch that at all. Maybe that's what the cave paintings was kind of more just, they're like, okay, we'll do that instead of an offer. I don't know. But yeah, on a scale of 1 to 10, Rivers and Rafts, I'm actually going to give a 9. Like, I really like this expansion. I think it's super cool, and it looks good. Like, it's just so clean and just fun to play around with. And that's it, everyone. That was my thoughts on Rivers and Rafts. Let me know what you think of this expansion in the comments below. Other than that, like, comment, share, and subscribe, and have a wonderful whatever time of day it is for you. Hey everyone, thank you for watching, and I really hope that you enjoyed the video. If you would like to see more of my content, go ahead and click that subscribe button and the bell to be notified whenever I upload any new content. If you feel like supporting the channel, you can go ahead and click that Patreon link to be taken to my Patreon, and any help is truly appreciated. Other than that, stick around for any other run-throughs or reviews or cool top 10s or whatever I feel like putting on. Other than that, like, comment, share, and subscribe, and have a wonderful whatever time of day it is for you.